So, last day, we looked at multiplying terms, monomials. We only had one term multiplying another term, right? A monomial times a monomial, right? Today, we're going to look at how do you multiply a monomial and something with two terms. What was that called if you had two terms? You guys remember that from a couple units ago?
Binomial.
Binomial, right? So typically, when you have stuff in brackets, like let's create a question here. You go 3. Let's go 3 in brackets 2 plus 4. Right? We do a question like this, and we follow our BEDMAS operations, right? So what's our first step that we do? Our brackets, right? So we do the stuff inside the brackets, right? And we have 2 plus 4, that gives us a 6, right? Then we have this 3 sitting outside. What do we do with that 3? Multiply. 3 times 6 is 18. And that is our normal operation, right? But it only works if the stuff inside the bracket you can add. They're alike. 2 and 4, they're both numbers. They're alike. We can add these together. X and 3 are not alike from last chapter, remember? So we can't combine these together. So how do we get past this math step if we can't add them together? So there's something called the distributive property, right? That you guys are going to learn and use this a lot in math. So this is a workaround in this situation when you can't combine the stuff inside the brackets, right? So I'll show you how that one works. So the way it works is we take the term outside the bracket and we distribute it through the brackets. This multiplies everything inside the brackets. So we go 3 times 2. Then we have a plus sign in between the next one, so we put a plus sign in. Then we go 3 times 4 as our second term. So we are multiplying the outside to the inside. And when we do this, we combine these together, we get a 6. We combine these two together, that gets a 12. And 6 plus 12 still gives us the same answer, is 18. So it is just a different way of getting to the same answer. Now, normally you would never do this for this kind of question. Right? This is a lot faster. But when you have terms inside the brackets you just can't add, we have to do something like this. Right? So this is where the nice part of math starts coming out. Up to now, most of the stuff that you guys have been doing is like, hey, you have to do step 1, you have to do step 2, step 3. There's only one order. At this stage in math, you start learning that there's parallel steps. So you can choose which way you want to go and still come to the same answer, as long as all the steps you do are mathematically sound. And you can see that a lot in the next chapter. Like, I'll teach one way, and you'll be solving equations, you're like, Mr. Dollar, is this right? You'll be doing a different way than I was doing, and I was like, yeah, it's still right. Because there's more than one way to approach problems, as long as each step is mathematically correct. Okay? So how do we do this? We do this by multiplying the monomial, that's the term outside the brackets, to each term inside the brackets, the polynomial. Okay? So if we have a question like this one here, we take our monomial and we multiply it to everything inside. So the first one, I'm going to write this out. 2x times x. Then we have a plus sign in between here. So I'm going to put down the plus sign. Then we have 2x times 3. You can use the time symbols or you can use the bracket symbols, whatever you want. So now, this is two mini questions of what we did on our day one notes. All right, so we look at this, and you combine these together. What do you get when you combine those together? 2x2, right? You multiply the coefficients, add the exponents. Okay? How about the next one?
6. No.
Yeah, 6 and the x. 2 times the 3, multiply the coefficients. The x has nothing to combine with, so that just stays the same, just like you just did in your assignment. And we have a plus sign, right? You look inside your brackets. Your brackets had 2 terms. Your final answer is going to have 2 terms, right? So make sure, just like last chapter, you include those signs in between. Okay. Now, it doesn't matter what side this monomial is on. Is it on the left side? Is it on the right side? It doesn't matter, right? We just take our monomial and it multiplies everything inside that bracket. So the first one is we go like this. The order doesn't matter either. You can multiply this one first if you wanted to. So I go 4.2n times 2n. All right, then I do the next one. I get these two. Right, I got 4.2n times 7. And we have a minus sign in between, so we keep that minus sign. Okay, now it doesn't matter if you have whole numbers or fractions or decimals. We just multiply, and you follow the multiplier rule. So what is 4.2 times 2?
8.4.
Yeah. So when we combine these, is 8.4, right? And if you're not comfortable with it, grab your calculator, right? 4.2 times 2, 8.4. Okay, now what about the variable? So we have an n and an n. So what should the exponent for the n be? 2. 1 and 1. We add them together. Okay? How about the next one? What do we get? 28.8? I think that's incorrect. I think it should be 29. Let's see. 4.2 times 7, 29.4. Right, you got to carry the extra 1. So 29.4. And what about the variable? What do we have for our variable? Does it disappear? Right? No. It doesn't combine with anything, so it just stays as is. And we have that minus sign in between. And that is your final answer. Okay? And the only way we can make this any harder than what you've seen this so far is by throwing in fractions. Right? So, but we just use our multiplication rules for our fractions. The steps are still the same. We take our monomial and we multiply out to the first term. And we write that out. We have negative, and I'm going to change this. So we have the numerators on the top nicely, and I have the numerator on the top and a denominator here. So it looks nice. Right? Okay, and do the same thing for the other one. Multiply this out. Right, so we have negative 4/3 x times 12/1. And we have the minus sign in between. Okay? So, cleaning up the first set, what do we get? right? When we're multiplying fractions, remember, our answer is going to be a fraction. We multiply the tops together to give us the top number. We multiply the bottoms together to give us the bottom number. So what do we have on the top? Beer per tap?
Negative 24x2.
Yeah, negative 24x2. Multiply the numbers, add the exponents. What do you have in the bottom?
3.
3. Now, we do the same thing for the other one, right? We multiply the tops across, multiply the bottoms together across, right? What do we have on the top? What do we have on the bottom? What's our numerator? What's our denominator? Beer per tap?
Negative 48x.
Negative 48x on the top. 4 times 12 is 48, and the x has nothing to combine with. And how about the denominator?
3.
3. Okay? Okay. Now, just like we did all the times before, we have fractions. We look to see if we can reduce and simplify those fractions. Can 3 go into 24? Yeah, right? It can go in how many times? Not 7. 8 times. Right? So this fraction is negative 8x squared. And we have this minus sign here. And 3 can go into 48 how many times? Right? And use your calculator if you don't know that. You have 48 divided by 3 is 16. Right? So negative 16x. And that's our answer here. And the only thing I'm going to suggest cleaning up here is, if you look at our final answer, we've got 2 negatives right next to each other. So 2 negatives combine to make a plus sign. So that answer is not incorrect, but it's not as concise as it could be. So we could rewrite it with a plus sign in between. All right? That gives it a little bit more concise. All right? Not easy, but you sort of understand the steps, right? You should be impressed, happy with yourself that you can look at this and this sort of makes sense. Compared to what you've done in previous grades, this is like a huge leap forward, right? Okay. Now, I like showing these individual steps here. But those are called minor steps, and it does not necessarily need to be shown. Depends on how comfortable you are at your math level, right? If you get to next year, you'll notice that we could do these questions without showing that middle step. And most teachers will probably just go like this: hey, we're going to times this by this, right? And we're going to do that calculation in our head. What do we get when we multiply these two numbers together? Negative 9. And what about the x's? 2. x2, right? And then we do this one and this one, right? We have a minus sign in between. And what do we get when we multiply those two together? Negative 18. And what about the variable? X, right? So now we have 2 negatives sitting next to each other. That could be cleaned up to make a plus sign. Right? Now, so this is called like the rainbow method. So you look at your page, you'll see all these arrows. It looks like a whole bunch of rainbows. Right? You do what is comfortable for you. If you can look at this and see the calculation in your head, just go straight to this step. If for you it's easier to look at one piece at a time, okay, I'm going to write down this calculation. And then just focus on this calculation, come up next and do this. Bit more work, but you got to do whatever it takes to get to the right answer, right? So try, is it 2 questions? The next 2 questions on your own. See if you come up with the correct answer. Give you a couple of minutes here.
Look, the envelope.
Okay,
Because
let's
it's not.
go over this. Like, I think we went a little fast. Some people have got it, other people are still making some mistakes. So I'm gonna maybe be more deliberate in what I'm saying here, right? So you take the one with the one term, and that's gonna multiply everything in the other bracket. Doesn't matter what order you do this. So when you set up your multiplication now, you go, hey, this term times whatever you multiply here. So exactly what you see. So I set up this and this, right? And actually, I'll put it right here. So I'm going to put these down in the same order that they show up in the bracket. We have a plus sign in between, and I can go here, right? And I have this term and this term. So I'm going to write down both of these exactly as I see them, right? With a multiplication symbol in between, right? So when I was walking around, some people only had one term as their final answer here. Remember I said, look inside your brackets. If you have two terms here, your final number is going to have final answer is going to have two terms, right? So we combine these together now, which I think most people know how to do. The mistakes was more with this first step. 2c times 2c is just 2c. C times c, c squared with a plus sign in between. Okay? Now for the next one, once again, you take the single one from outside the bracket, we multiply it to the stuff inside the brackets, in the same order you see in the brackets. Okay? So I'm going to write this exactly as I see it, and this one exactly as I see it, so we get the multiplication correct. 4x times 2x. Now there's a minus sign in between, so I'm going to put a minus sign. Then I'm going to write the second multiplication. I have these two exactly as I see it. So this term and this term. So I have 4x times 1. Now we look to combine. Put equal signs here. We multiply the coefficients, 8. We add the exponents. Right? We have a minus sign in between. We multiply the coefficients. 4 times 1 is just a 4. And the x has nothing to combine with, so just the x. So if the bracket has two terms, our final answer is going to have two terms. Right? That should be a dead giveaway you should check for. It's like, hey, is it different than what I see here? I must have made a mistake. Right? Then you go look back and check. Right? So we're going to stop there.